What happened? How can you lose a jetliner? How can it vanish in thin air? We were clueless as to what could have caused this tragedy right under our noses. It just disappears off the radar screen.
2014, a passenger jet vanished without a trace. Ocean, sky, and silence kept its secrets. Years passed. Theories swirled. Searches rose and fell.
The Royal Malaysian Air Force primary radar data showed that an aircraft which was believed but not confirmed to be MH370 did indeed turn back.
Now, powerful AI tools have uncovered clues that could rewrite the story of MH370. Data-driven discoveries, investigators say, might bring us closer than ever to solving one of aviation's most haunting mysteries. The clock had just ticked past midnight on March 8, 2014, as Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, a massive Boeing 707, soared into the night sky from Kuala Lumpur. On board were 227 passengers and 12 crew members, all headed for a routine flight to Beijing. The last routine communication came at 1:19 a.m., when the co-pilot calmly wished air traffic controllers good night. Malaysian 370. But what happened after became a mystery to everyone until now. The timeline of disappearance. It was a seemingly normal final radio transmission before the plane was handed over to Vietnamese airspace. But a mere 2 minutes later, at 1:21 a.m., an eerie silence fell. The plane's transponder, which is the important device in the plane that identifies an aircraft to civilian radar, was switched off. On every monitor, the digital icon representing MH370 simply blinked out of existence, leaving a blank space where a commercial airliner once was. It was a terrifying and impossible vanishing act. But whatever the civilian radar couldn't picture, the military radar was sure to do so. While these events were hidden from the public eye, military screens across the region showed the plane didn't just vanish, but rather it took a sharp, deliberate U-turn. The plane had flown back across the Malay Peninsula and out into the Malacca Strait, heading northwest on a completely new, unauthorized course. This was a ghost flight, as many people had thought. It was an actual aircraft operating without its electronic identity, flying a route that defied all logic. This strange, silent route led to immediate confusion and miscommunication between air traffic controllers and military command. The meteorological and airport officials struggled to make sense of the conflicting information, and those precious, critical hours in the dark were tragically wasted, creating missed opportunities to track the plane. The plane may have disappeared from our screens, but it continued to communicate in a way no one expected. This is where the satellites come in. Even with its main communication systems off, the aircraft's satellite data unit was still up and going. It was making an automated, silent handshake with a single Inmarsat satellite orbiting high over the Indian Ocean. These weren't messages in the traditional sense, but more like a periodic ping, a signal of life confirming the plane was still connected to the network. For over 7 hours after the plane vanished from radar, these pings kept coming, acting as a trail stretching across a featureless ocean. When experts were called in to look at what was going on, they were able to analyze the timing and frequency of these signals. By measuring the slight delays in the signal's travel time, they could pinpoint the plane's approximate distance from the satellite at each point, even without knowing its exact location. This analysis led to the creation of the now famous seventh arc. In a simpler sense, it is a giant, curved line stretching thousands of miles across the deep, vast Indian Ocean. This was a theoretical ping ring, where the plane was believed to have been when it made its final automated handshake with the satellite. The theory was that the plane, having run out of fuel, simply glided to a stop somewhere along this massive arc. This information became the sole basis for the official search, guiding ships and submarines to a new, impossibly huge search area. It was a groundbreaking clue, but it was also incredibly frustrating. This single line of possibility was all they had, yet it left investigators with a search area the size of a small continent. For years, this data was all we had. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if the key to solving this mystery wasn't in the raw data itself, but in a new way of analyzing it? The search of the century. The world's response to the vanishing was an unprecedented global effort. Initially, search teams focused on the South China Sea, where the plane was last seen on civilian radar. This was a logical starting point, but it was based on flawed initial assumptions and a lack of access to the crucial military radar data. Once the Inmarsat satellite pings were revealed, the search led to a massive, costly, and difficult transition. After much intervention, dozens of nations, with their most advanced ships and aircraft, descended on the southern Indian Ocean. The search area was immense and located in one of the most remote and deepest parts of the planet. To map this immense underwater landscape, investigators deployed cutting-edge technology. They used side-scan sonar to create detailed images of the ocean floor, while remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, and autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, were sent to scour the abyssal depths. The terrain was treacherous, filled with underwater mountains, vans, and deep trenches, making the search a true technological and logistical nightmare. So many years passed with no sign of the main wreckage. Then, a few years into the search, a small piece of the plane washed ashore on Reunion Island, thousands of miles away. When it was discovered, it was a part of the plane and the wing flaperon. Later, more debris, including parts of the engine cowling, was found on other African coastlines. These finds were the heartbreaking confirmations of the crash, but they still didn't give any clues about the actual location of the main wreckage. Ocean currents had carried them far from the final impact site, turning them into ghost messengers of a forgotten tragedy. The official search was suspended, but the mystery of the plane's disappearance refused to be forgotten. A new kind of investigator, one that can process unimaginable amounts of data, was about to enter the picture. For years, human search teams had tried tirelessly to piece together the clues, but the amount of information and theories from experts was overwhelming. Information like the millions of data points from satellite pings, intricate ocean currents, detailed weather patterns, and all sorts of hypothetical data was just too much for even a team of experts to process. The case needed a different kind of thinking, and a more powerful one at that. That's where artificial intelligence and quantum computing came in. These weren't futuristic ideas anymore. They were real tools being used to solve real-world problems. AI algorithms were deployed to rapidly go through all the old data, looking for patterns or tiny anomalies that human experts couldn't pick up. These programs could connect pieces of information that seemed unrelated at first, like linking the exact timing of a satellite ping to a specific wave height in the Indian Ocean. Not only that, quantum computing, which is a whole new level of processing power, by the way, was used to run complex simulations of ocean dynamics and flight paths with incredible accuracy. These new technologies were applied to re-examine everything from the raw satellite signals to the detailed maps of the ocean floor and the way they found parts of the plane that drifted across the ocean. They had hoped that by looking at all these pieces of clues and information from a fresh, digital eye, completely new clues leading to the plane's sudden disappearance would emerge. As everyone had hoped, AI performed incredibly well, and its ability to find connections between seemingly unrelated data sets opened the door to a series of events that no one could have figured out in decades. But even with these new tools, a retired researcher took another look at the data, and what he found was more disturbing than anything any AI tool could have found or anyone could have imagined. The person who made this discovery wasn't some super genius computer scientist, as anyone would have guessed. Being a retired researcher from the University of Tasmania, Dr. Vincent Line was intrigued by how a plane as big as that had vanished without a trace. So he came up with a simple but brilliant idea to use AI to scour incredibly detailed maps of the ocean floor, known as Jebco bathymetric data. He didn't just want to look for the missing plane, but also for what had led to the plane going missing in the first place. He was interested in looking for any anomaly or tiny imperfection on the seafloor that shouldn't be there. And after months of painstaking analysis, it popped up on his screen. It was a single bright yellow pixel whose coordinates were latitude 33.02 degrees south and longitude 100.27 degrees east. This pixel was something that could have been easily mistaken as a computer glitch, but it was too detailed to be one. This pixel was an extreme localized anomaly in the terrain data, a spot that didn't match any known natural formations or geological features. And the location itself was also strange. This tiny point sat inside a deep, steep-sided pit he called the Penang Longitude Deep Hole. This hole seemed to be at the eastern end of Broken Ridge, plunging to an astonishing depth of 6,000 meters. To put that in perspective, that's nearly 20,000 feet down, which makes it a perfect hiding place for any large object like a missing plane. Dr. Line also concluded that the pixel was man-made, and not something that was created not by nature, but by a catastrophic event. This scar on the ocean floor was the piece of evidence everyone had been waiting for years. The location, chilling enough, couldn't compare to a theory, which was even far more disturbing. This wasn't a random crash. It was a deliberate, controlled descent into a carefully chosen grave. The controlled ditching theory. For a decade, the official story has been a ghost flight theory, where it was believed that the plane ran out of fuel, spiraled out of control, and crashed into the ocean. But Dr. Line's new theory completely challenged the narrative. He argues that MH370 was intentionally flown to that remote location, and it was not a crash at all, but a premeditated, controlled ditching. It almost sounds like the famous Miracle on the Hudson with Captain Chesley "Sully" Sullenberger, who glided his plane to a controlled water landing. According to Dr. Line, a maneuver of such a deep depth would require an extraordinary skill to keep the aircraft intact upon impact with the water. This new theory finds unsettling support in the debris that was found. The wing flaperon and other fragments that washed ashore didn't show the kind of damage you would expect from a high-speed, explosive crash. Instead, the damage was consistent with a controlled, lower-speed water landing. After a controlled ditching, a skilled pilot could have landed the plane on the water relatively intact. The plane would have begun to take on water slowly and sink. At such extreme depths, the immense water pressure would have caused the fuselage to implode, shattering the plane and explaining why there was no large single debris field at the bottom of the ocean. This theory changes the entire story from a tragic accident to a calculated and sinister act. Now, from this angle, it seems the intent was not just to crash the plane, but to make sure it could never be found. In order to erase every last trace of its existence, it was almost the perfect disappearing act. For a controlled dive of this nature to be possible, it would have required an expert pilot with a clear and sinister plan. So the question on everyone's mind is, who was in control? This brings us to the pilot, Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. He was a highly respected veteran pilot with a distinguished career. But after the disappearance, investigators discovered a flight simulator on his home computer. After an intense dive into the program, it was revealed that the simulated flight route that eerily mirrored the final defied the official search area route of MH370. The simulation ended with a planned ditching in the remote southern Indian Ocean, a route that investigators had initially dismissed as an unsettling coincidence. They couldn't connect it to the actual flight, so the evidence was largely ignored. However, Dr. Line's new discovery changed everything. His Penang longitude deep hole lies at a key intersection of that very simulated flight path and the longitude of Zahari's home city. This connection, which was previously overlooked, now seems far too specific to be a random coincidence. This odd connection makes the flight simulator data a curious detail in a potential blueprint for a well-drafted and horrifying plan. While the official 2018 report on the MH370 investigation acknowledged the simulation's existence, it stated that there was no proof it was part of an official flight plan. As theories and information fly, it could just have been a regular part of a flight enthusiast's practice. However, this cold, calculated plan raises a lot of questions. This evidence suggests a cold, calculated plan. But how could a pilot so skilled evade detection for so long? The answer lies in the plane's initial flight path and the gaps in the surveillance. The clever, unseen path. Let's go back to those first moments after the transponder was switched off. The plane's U-turn was not a random or panicked maneuver. According to aviation experts, that turn was the beginning of a deliberate, calculated path. Instead of flying randomly, the aircraft was expertly navigated along the boundaries of various countries' airspaces, like Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. By flying right on the edge, the plane was able to stay out of a single country's airspace for too long. It was a perfect plan to stay under the radar. This ingenious routing created what experts have called a black hole in surveillance. No single country's air traffic control was in charge, so no one knew for sure who was supposed to be tracking it. This also prevented any immediate and aggressive response, such as an interception by military fighter jets. It was a perfect location to disappear. The plane flew on, a ghost in the night for hours. This kind of plan would have required an experienced pilot with intimate knowledge of regional air traffic control systems, military protocols, and the specific limitations of their radar coverage. The pilot knew exactly where to go and how to stay invisible, exploiting weaknesses in the system. All of these clues point to only one malicious intent. Right now, it's far from a mystery but a carefully strategized plan leading to a tragedy. Now that the plan has been revealed, what's the next step to take? The implications of these new AI-driven findings are enormous. They suggest that the decade-long search in a general area was a waste of time. The focus should no longer be on a random search. Rather, it needs to be in a specific, geographically anomalous pit in the deep ocean. The very one Dr. Line pointed out. This call for a new targeted search has sparked a renewed global conversation. In March 2022, a company called Ocean Infinity, which had conducted a previous search, committed to a new expedition. They planned to use 2 new robotic ships to replace their old ones. Then, in March 2023, on the 9th anniversary of the disappearance, Malaysian Transport Minister Anthony Loke vowed not to close the book on the case, saying future searches would be considered with new and credible information. That promise wasn't broken, as in March 2024, ahead of the 10th anniversary, Malaysia announced it would consult with Australia about a new search with Ocean Infinity. Researchers from the University of Liverpool had also started using a new technique, analyzing data from weak signal radio communication to estimate the plane's final path. Then, a huge breakthrough happened. On December 20th, 2024, the Malaysian government gave an in-principle agreement for Ocean Infinity to start a new search. On February 25th, 2025, Minister Loke officially announced the start of a new 18-month search for MH370. The mission was planned to cover a focused area of 15,000 square kilometers. Ocean Infinity was operating under a no-find, no-fee agreement, with a $70 million reward if they found the wreckage. While they had to suspend the search on April 3, 2025, because it wasn't the right season for ocean work, they plan to resume the search at the end of 2025. The technology is ready, the data has been re-examined, and a new location has been pinpointed with unnerving accuracy. But will the world be ready for it? The case of MH370 has reshaped aviation forever. While the search for the missing plane is still on, the tragedy has forced nations to reconsider how to track aircraft. The future of aviation safety will be defined by the very technologies helping us now. The inclusion of AI and quantum computing will play a huge role in solving mysteries and in preventing tragedies moving forward. Also, these advanced technologies will be used for predictive maintenance, anticipating mechanical failures before they happen, and for smarter air traffic management. Even emergency response will be faster and more informed thanks to these tools. But even with all the advancements, there's a human element to this story that can't be forgotten. The most important reason to find MH370 isn't to prove a theory or to test a new technology. It's for the families of the 239 people on board. Finding the wreckage, even after all this time, would provide the first real step towards closure. It would finally give them a tangible end to a decade-long nightmare. The story of MH370 will always be a part of one of the very mysteries that still leaves us wondering. Regardless, it will also prove the determination of human persistence and the power of technology. So, over to you. What do you think about the new theory? Do you believe it was a premeditated, controlled ditching, or a tragic accident? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell on our channel so you never miss any of our uploads. If you enjoyed this video, click on the next video on your screen to watch more videos like this one.